Yo, 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 what's going on? It's your boy Tahir Johnson, and we're back with the Cannabis Diversity Report. First of all, I got to say what's up to y'all, man. It's been a minute. I got to say I've missed everybody. I've missed doing the show. I've been a little bit busy, but also at the same time, when you've been doing something like this, man, I get in the point where I don't want to just do it just to do it. And I haven't really been, I have so many people reach out to me and tell me how much doing the podcast like has motivated them in the industry and just learn from it. And so I miss doing it. And people also reach out saying they want to be on the show, but me and Richeda just connected and met yesterday. And it was so organic that it inspired me to the point where I was saying like, yo, I got to come back and do this because it's meeting people, hearing stories like yours that really inspire me to do what I do in the cannabis industry in the first place. So first of all, I'm thankful for you, like on the spot, like last minute, just hopping on, like, yo, you know what? I'm about to come out of retirement. You trying to do this tomorrow?
Let's do it.
How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I mean, it's a beautiful day in Atlanta today, so I'm doing good. You know, that always match energy. I'm getting ready for going into my second year of law school, so it's been lots of pre-reading, but I've been in between time. I've been good.
Word, that's what's up. So first, I'll just give a quick little intro. Richeda and I were introduced by my good friend Mary Bailey from Last Prisoner Project. Shout out LPP doing all the great work. Of course, we know as we have this cannabis industry, one of the most important things is trying to make sure that we free the people that are locked up for cannabis. And so, man, Richeda, you had such a powerful story, man. Again, like you know, just I won't say it, just, you know, talk a little bit about who you are, you know, where you're from, and, you know, just tell folks what's going on.
Yeah, so my name is Richeda Ashmeade. My family and I are originally from Jamaica, but we've migrated to Atlanta. My father is currently serving a 22-year sentence based on conspiracy. And that means that I'm like, to kind of break it down some, you pretty much can go to prison for 22 years for someone literally just calling your name. You don't need any proof. However, like, as long as somebody says your name and you pretty much are the one called, even the guy that ended up the guy that they end up catching and actually was in possession, he did 0 years, walked away. And my father is currently incarcerated for 22 years for conspiracy to possess.
Yeah, man, and that's so crazy. First of all, to even imagine like the idea of like having 22 years being taken away from your family, from your life over cannabis, over a plant, right? And one of the things that, like I was saying, and man, it literally had me like watering up when we were talking yesterday, just thinking about the fact that like I have daughters and like, you know, you've now experienced like, you know, 20, like your father being gone after this. You know, what is that like? What does it feel like? You know, just being in that situation, knowing that you have a loved one being gone now, and we have this whole multi-billion-dollar global industry going on for the same thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think for me, it's bigger than just a loved one, right? Like, this is a parent, and I'm big on saying I believe that the Black father is just not optional in a household. I'm a big believer in that, meaning it's very pivotal for the father to be in a household, to have that influence. And I think there's no stronger bond than a daughter and her father. I truly believe that. For me, I would definitely say my dad was incarcerated in middle school, right? So I was about maybe 11 years old. And I always say like that was a big tragedy for myself, my household, but also our community. I shared a little bit that like my dad was really the hood's father, like in the sense of like everybody relied on this man. We always make jokes and be like, this man think he the Black Jesus. My dad speaks in parables, just definitely wise beyond his years, and truly somebody that is just, I would say, intelligent, very self-aware, and I mean, really my hero, a hero. And I feel like a lot of I don't know. A lot of kids don't usually have that experience and feel that way about their father, but my dad is my best friend. And I say that all the time. And I mean it. Like, we're probably as close. We're closer to my mom, closer than I could even imagine, really. And I mean, being away from him all these years not only has impact me negatively, but I feel like I really felt like I had to learn a lot of things my father couldn't teach me. You know, my family, my older siblings have gotten down into paths. They say like when a parent incarcerated, it's a 50% chance another child will be incarcerated. And by the grace of God, you know, I stayed out of trouble and I decided to channel my way of kind of fighting back into going into law school and being really good into academics as well as poetry. My father's mother used to write poetry. And so that really became my outlet for how I expressed myself about my father, because for a long time, and really like majority of my life, only about a year ago, I started to kind of share the story because, well, I got excited. Biden kind of is in office. And I'm like, you know what? I need to kind of start sharing this story. And so I think going through, I mean, my father been incarcerated 13 years, right? My dad has health issues, and going through the ups and downs of kind of like getting, you know, trying to get him out, doing different appeals to the court and not being successful. Um, it kind of just drive me to be the person that I am today.
And so, like, yeah, like you said, you've been working on this, and but you've decided to kind of like you're gonna take it in your own hands. Like you're working on going to law school, like fighting that fight. So that I'm sure that it has to be part of it, right? You being able to educate, understand the law, so that you could work on getting your dad out. Like, I mean, talk about that a little bit, because I mean, we talked about this a lot yesterday, right? Like a lot of people, when we're faced with this situation, like you don't necessarily have like a lot of people would give up or say they couldn't make it. Like what inspires you to kind of do what you do and kind of go to kind of be on this fight that you're on?
My father, man, I'm super big on family. I'm super big on loyalty. I think when we have a misconception about Black men, Black father overall, but that's the number one population right now that is incarcerated for cannabis, Black men. And a lot of times I feel like there is a story there to tell about how we make these people invisible. I don't think it's a coincidence that prisons are usually in like the boonies. Your service cuts off 10 minutes before you get to the prison. I think
Hey, to come visit, talk to them, right? That's real.
And it's like the prisons are in like little pockets where it's like they're hidden all over. You wouldn't even know a prison is behind there. It's all, and I think that's intentional. I think it's
intimidating.
Exile where you could put somebody to the side and say, you're forgotten, right? It's almost like locked away in a castle somewhere far, far away. Like it's almost that story in the sense of like, I feel like a lot of times once our fathers, our brothers, our sons are then sent to prison, it's now a completely invisible story. You forget about them. They always say, you know, a year or two when they're in there, eventually people start to forget about you. And that just has not been true for like me at all. When my father was incarcerated, I was like, oh, that made me go harder. Like we gotta start tapping in more. What's going on? And I think that's really what has always fueled me. Like I've been wanting to go to law school since middle school, and I kind of just was seeking different avenues to get there, but also just trying to make people aware of my story before going to law school in a sense, because I already knew what the goal was, and I just kind of wanted to do it right. Like it's a new field. Cannabis law is a new field. I mean, the cannabis industry, right, is like as of a couple of years ago, is like also very new. So I think for me, it was like something has to be done. I'm definitely a person that kind of takes things into their hands and says, you know what, like I've been dealt a very shitty card, excuse my language, but I'm trying my best to kind of make a difference. And what I'm hoping is that, I mean, maybe there's a daughter out there that has the same story as me, and maybe like that can be impactful somewhere. And I think we don't really realize how silly this all is, right? Like, I mean, we're talking about cannabis here. We're talking about weed here, where it's like right now it's $1 billion industry in California. You know what I mean? 7 billion in sales this year. And it's like, my father has been locked away for twice that, almost 14. And it's like, it's almost ridiculous. And I'm sure kind of with the recent news coming out about Brittany, getting the 9 years in Russia, like that right there, if it's not in our face, I really don't like that. It's quite silly, like how you can get less in prison for murder sometimes for cannabis. And so I think for me, I see the system broken, and I'm like, somebody has to say something, and that's really what it is.
Well, and that's a really good point. And I got a question for that. About that, right? So, this Brittany Griner situation is terrible, right? Like she's over there, like about to do 9 years again for cannabis. And I guess the question that I have is, when you think about our country, of course, we need to do everything we can to get her home. But as the U.S., the fact that we have people still locked up for cannabis, like you said, your pop's doing 22 years right here in this country, right? Like, how does that make you, I guess, just feel like overall, just like that? That situation, like.
Well, I feel like for me, it makes me frustrated with our current administration, if I'm being honest, because, Biden did an immediate release. And it's like, we're going to do everything we can. And I just feel like I read that and was like, but please actually do something though. Like, don't just, I think sometimes in politics, it can just be a formality to be like, let's acknowledge it because it'll look bad on us if we don't, versus like actually action. One of Biden's agenda items was to release cannabis prisoners. And it's like, and it was also the student loans. And it's like, okay, you let me down there. And it's like, I'm trying to figure out, maybe, I hate to be like this, but closer to re-election, this is when we're going to start talking about these promises, because it's not just we're trying to do something because it's just wrong. Like, this just doesn't feel right. It's a matter of, like, I think for Biden, it's like, let's just do it because we have to, and actually not fulfilling the promises that you're giving to the people. And that's the same reason why it's like this country is literally chaotic right now, because we literally don't know if anything's going to be done to anything. We're just kind of waiting in the silence. And so, Biden released, I believe, I forget the amount of people a couple months ago, but 8 of them were cannabis prisoners. And it was probably like somewhere into like 30, 40 people. And so I'm just like, I'm not understanding. Like, if he kind of made a promise and he said, hey, like, this is what I'm going to do, and you're not delivering, I'm like, I just feel like after the trauma that we just went through with COVID, and we had to get through Trump, is like, I was just like, come on, we need to win,
And had the nerve to say, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black.
That's what got me. I'm like, okay.
Like, what you gonna do about our issues, right?
And not paying any attention to issues. And I think it's just a matter of like, we got to get the administration's attention. I think so, because I read somewhere that it's like 70% of the US population wants it to be legalized. And I'm like, that's fine. But I'm like, we need to talk about the decriminalization of it, actually. Like, I think that's a bigger law. Like, sure, you want to get it legalized because, you're about to, Colorado made so much money. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not just, I feel like sometimes you can't get administration attention until it's like, tell me something where I can benefit from it, versus to be like, this just doesn't make sense. Like, if we're now allowing people to profit off of this plant, we should let go of the people that pretty much got imprisoned by it. You know what I mean?
Right. And speaking of getting out the people out of prison that have been like locked up for the plant, like I said to folks out there earlier, we met and we're connected through LPP. I know you're an LPP constituent. My parakeet's going crazy in the background. But anyway, like, what does it mean, like, to be like part of Last Prisoner Project? Like, what does the organization do? How do they help you in terms of like the fight that you're, to try to get your dad out?
Yeah, so I work with LPP pretty closely. I do, a variety of things. LPP does give a grant to my father for his commissary every couple of months. They also, LPP, one thing about them, they are nationwide, worldwide. Like I know Mary just came from London, and so they have really put my family, I guess, in the forefront of like a tangible story and showing them, hey, this is why we do it. They've also let me come along with a lot of their fun adventures. I went to MJ Impact, and that was in NYC this summer in May. And so they did a benefit concert for families that are suffering, or fathers, mothers, any relative that have been incarcerated due to cannabis. They also have provided a scholarship for me to go to college. To go to law school. So LPP has really, they're one of the organizations that I find myself a lot in these cannabis organizations. It's not a lot of action behind the words, and LPP is definitely, they do what they say. They put their money where their mouth is, and I will always, forever. The LPP is really family to me. Stephanie Shepherd, she has a similar story.
That's my girl right there, man.
That's my auntie. The last time we talked on the phone, she said, "Listen, Richeda, I think it's official. You're my niece." I said, "I already felt it." So I love Stephanie Shepherd. She is now she's on the board of directors.
Board member out here, people making moves.
Right. I love the Black women always winning for me. It's always gonna be a celebration. But she is her story is very similar to my father's. On top of that, I could call Auntie Stephanie in the middle of the night, like, listen, I'm going through it, and she picks up. So that organization really is a special thing to me, because it's not just an organization that's like, oh yeah, we're trying to bring awareness. They really are involved in my life, and even Mary Bailey, she messages me, and whenever I'm like, she'll ask about finals, and when I'm like, I just finished my finals, she'll be like, I'm so proud of you. So she's like, I'm a proud auntie over here. So they champion me in so many ways, and try their best to try to connect me with awesome people like you that can kind of haven't heard my story, and I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful.
Yeah, and shout out to all the fam there, man. Got too many good people there. I'm not even gonna say no names specifically, because if I do and I leave somebody out, they're gonna be like, damn, how you just gonna leave me out? But at the very minimum, I will shout out to other
Phil, Cam.
Yeah, man. My people's for Rain, Dante, you already shouted out Steph. I'm not gonna go into Steph.
No, not one more. There's love for everybody. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Love for everybody, man. And like, again, that is like, again, this is what cannabis is about, right? Like, if we're going to have this multi-billion-dollar industry, like, it's no way that we can do this and allow people to be like still sitting inside, man. It doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah. And so you talked about like that benefit concert a little bit, but you just glanced over it, like, right? Because as I'm looking at the title, it does have poet/law student. We talked about the law student side, but you even got to do a little performance at that benefit concert. Talk about that a little bit.
So that was probably maybe top 3 coolest moments of my life. But I opened for Ghostface Killah in Terminal 5 in May of this summer, and it was the coolest experience. One, so many families came out. I think that was what it was for me. Like, it was cool, right? Ghostface Killah, but the families that were coming up to me, and before I performed, like, they were making me cry, just hugging on them. And it was a beautiful space to kind of gather around, this venue for what we're all kind of mad about. Like, and I think it was also a space where it was like, we got vulnerable with each other. And so I got to do a little poem. It was not a little poem. Let me say that. It was a poem that's called Through a Daughter's Eyes. And pretty much what I did is kind of wrote a story in a sense, and talked about the last time I seen my father, what that's felt like. And I touched on the cannabis industry as well, where I just feel like how ridiculous it really is. And so I wrote this poem 3 years ago, but I was so afraid to kind of share this poem or even perform it, because even to this day, I really can't even perform the poem without crying. Like, I had to do it 2-3 times behind backstage, cry, like, okay, let's get it out. And then actually be able to gather myself to perform it, because I think a lot of times, like, people people could tell their story and become desensitized to it, right? I feel like in a sense, like we kind of do that with like police brutality. I feel like we've almost become like, we hear another killing on the news and we're just kind of like like it doesn't get the same shock factor. And so I kind of felt that way as well about my story, because I would talk to people and they were kind of like, yeah, like there's so many families like that. And it became almost like where this was normal. And I'm like, nah, let's have a conversation. Let me actually break this down for you and tell you like how much so this has affected me. And so poetry has always been my outlook. As I shared before, my father's mom used to write poetry. And so I believe that's where it comes from. But I've been writing poetry since kindergarten, submitting poems and just kind of expressing myself my whole life. And poetry is kind of, I just wrote a new book. It's called Speak Life. And so poetry has really been something that has saved me, honestly. And I decided to kind of, I talk about my anxiety. I talk about the pressure of what it's like to just be a Black woman and trying to navigate life without another parent involved. You know, I grew up low income. I had a typical story that you would say. And so my life in no way has been really perfect, but I try my best to make the best out of what I had. And so poetry has really been that for me. And I'm grateful to God just that I have a gift to be able to kind of tell stories that people are forgetting and tell them in a way that kind of like reignite something in people. I think people get so complacent and we ask for change, but we're not willing to kind of go through the uncomfortability to get there.
Yeah, man, and that's such a good point, man. And poetry's real talent, right? Like I got two parents that are like in performing arts. Like my dad's a jazz singer, my mom's a dancer, but I never quite got that. I didn't get none of the artistic talents. So like I never, like we talk about poetry, I never really got past the roses or red, violets or blue stage or whatever.
It's poetry.
But yeah, man, I hate to put you on the spot because like yesterday we was about to do the poem, but we got cut off before we had the dance to. So I know you said it's just like I know it brings out a lot of emotion, but you want to do it now? Can we do it now?
Let's do it. Let's run the poem.
All right, let's get it. I'm a back out. I'm gonna take myself out, and I'm gonna let you got the floor, man. It's all you.
All right. So as I stated, the name of this poem is Through a Daughter's Eyes. This is in my new book, Speak Life, that I released this summer. And so again, thank you so much, Tahir, for having me. I'm just gonna go into it. So my father has always been my best friend. Quality time was the very first love language he made sure that I learned. He was really good at translating through long phone calls, summers, and daddy-daughter weekends. The last daddy-daughter weekend, we spent a Saturday at the shopping mall. I remember letting go of his hand, running towards the entrance of the mall, and accidentally splitting the pole. He grabs me and he says, "Never let anything come between us." That day, I learned that my father was superstitious. Learned that most people in my family are. We duck for cover whenever the wings of an umbrella spread themselves inside a home. We throw salt over our left shoulder just for good measure. My father believes in superstitions the way he believes in God. Faith in things that some may say aren't proven, like his innocence. Called him guilty before his sentencing. When they booked him, I felt cut in half. Watched as the justice system played magician, making my father magically disappear by giving him a mandatory minimum prison sentence. In the courtroom, the jury became a choir as the prosecution orchestrated a false story, created him into one of those superstitions, a curse. When my father was taken into police custody, he was on his way to his cousin's funeral, and some would say he foreshadowed his own burial. A year after he vanished, he reappeared with a phone call. I remember my father meeting both David and Goliath, a fearless giant and a scared teenage Black boy. 1 in 3 Black men will go to prison in their lifetime, and my father made the cut. You see, the cannabis industry in California is predicted to hit 7 billion in sales when my father has served almost 14. I guess this is what they mean by double jeopardy, different prosecutions for the same offense. From 2018 to 2019, the cannabis industry sales succeeded by 22%, when my father is shackled by a 22-year sentence. You see, I don't believe in superstitious powers no more. My father has been locked away for a lifetime after a judge knocked on wood, ghosted Friday the 13th to be terrorized by the 13th Amendment. They tell us a black cat is bad luck just for being black. Say they are a sign of death, like ravens, like Jim Crow. And now I know why the cage bird sings a dreadful song to drown out the tone of their children crying in protest of their father's forced absence. But they tell me, don't say anything sad in his letters. So I reenact birthday parties and graduations, find him something to celebrate. They say, smile. It's not like he's dead. I say, don't tell me how alive my father is when I mourn his absence every morning. I have to resurrect our relationship in a 15-minute phone call. I want to pick up the phone to say, Dad, they keep telling me I look just like you, but I'm starting to forget what you look like. I want to say, show me how to choose the perfect man. How not to flinch at PDA, because the last time I held a man's hand in public, you became public property. Instead, I tell him of the good times we had. The roller coaster rides, story time before bed. Tell him I see you in my smile. They hold all the secrets I promised to never keep from you. I tell him that I became self-sufficient, Dad, learned how to stand on my own 2 feet, but damn it, I still need a father. I tell him I kept the promise I made at the mall that day. I turned my heart into a mason jar and preserved it there for the last 14 years because prison poles have never been enough to come between me and my father. Daddy-daughter weekends have turned into monitored visits by the government. He on one side of the table and I on the other. I grab his hand as tight as I can this time, showing him that I'll never let a damn thing come between us. Thank you.
Man, I gotta say, hold on, let me put myself back up in here. I gotta say, thank God that I was able to turn my camera off for a second because, Lord, man, first of all, that was beautiful. That was beautiful, and I know it takes a lot to do that. And man, just even imagining, what it feels like to be in that, man. So I guess what I would say, taking it back to, I guess the conversation we were having earlier about it being people being invisible in this situation, right? Like, I think that's what's always gets missed. Like, people say these phrases, like we talk about like the victims of the war on drugs and like people being locked up for cannabis, but it's like real people, right? This is your dad. This is like, like you talk about like holding his hand and like the last time you held a man's hand and how that impacts you like going through life, right? Like this is just so meaningful. So I mean, thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing.
Like, and what people don't know is you can't actually touch them every time. So the last time I've been able to see my father was almost like 7 years ago. And because of COVID, they cut down time on phones and they also cut visitations for the last 4 years. Before they even, like, COVID was a thing, they shut them down. So, and then when you make all that trip, right, you go all that way, like you can't even touch him. You can't hug. You get 1 second to hug him. If you hug him, the guards will come and say, okay, that's enough. And, it's like, I haven't seen my father in 7 years, lady. Like, I'm like, you can't even hold his hand across the table. Sometimes you have to ask for permission and you can only get a couple seconds just to touch him. Like, and for me, that's rough. I'm like, man, like you were right there and I can't even hold you. You know what I mean? I can't even touch you and say, hey, he's real. And my dad is getting older. He's having health issues. And so time is against us, unfortunately. And that's why I keep telling people, like, this cannabis decriminalization, it's actually a very time sensitive thing. I know sometimes when people are incarcerated, it's like they have nothing but time, but like not in this situation. I have a grandmother who's, her sight is not the best. And so I always say, like, I need my dad to be home so my grandmother can see before my grandmother can't see him. And it's really, I think people don't understand how cruel it is also inside the prison system. When I talked to my dad on the phone, I said, Dad, how you doing? He said, every day's a war. That's what he tells me every time we talk. So what's going on? He's like, man, and you can hear it in his voice. It breaks me to hear his voice. And I'm like, something's not right, and we filed for compassionate release. So what that is it's pretty much something where if you have any type of extraordinary circumstances, can file to be released. And so my dad's health issues, they pretty much said it wasn't severe enough. It wasn't extraordinary enough. And so even though he's having pain, you're not getting proper health, food is not good in there. So it's like, there's things where it's like, I feel like people don't understand how much, like, to say, like, the prison system in US is like, it's one of the most gruesome, I think, places. And it's one of the things that's why I think it becomes invisible, right? And we try to hide it because we're like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And then when we say criminal, we automatically stereotype the person. We don't know where they're coming from. We don't know their life story, and I think that's something that a lot of us could need a second to kind of check on, in a sense of like, we are so quick to make an assumption about a person. And I always say it's a tragedy how they try to dehumanize my father. Like this man isn't one of the most influential people in my life. Like, he wasn't one of the most smart. He's smart, like one of the smartest people I know. If my dad is like, I'm like, Dad, I want to build my credit. He sent me 8 books. I'm like, and like, that's the kind of dad he is. He's big on knowledge. He's big on love. He's big on,
even still,
even still, like, I don't make a move without my father. Like, I told someone once that I feel like I don't want to get married or have children until my father gets home, because like, that is how much I really heavily rely on this man in every move of my life. Like, I don't want him to miss out on so much he's already missed out on. Graduations, birthday parties. I said that in my poem, but I'm like, I'm serious. Like, he's missed a lot. And like on Father's Day, I talked to him and say, Dad, like, I appreciate you for everything you do, that you still make an effort. A lot of people don't still make an effort to be in your child's life, even incarcerated. And I'm like, it's okay. All you did is miss my childhood. And he says to me, he's like, but that's enough. Meaning, like, that's a lot. That's a big deal. That's a big deal, though. Even still, like, it's not just something so simple like, oh, it was just my childhood. He's like, I missed out on a lot for you guys, and that breaks me every day. And so, like, I almost am afraid to even do anything else, like another milestone, because I don't want him to miss it. But he's at every graduation. When I graduated, my dad was on the phone. When I was at the benefit concert, my father was on the phone. So he's like, listen, if I could be there, if I got to be there in spirit or phone, I'm going to be there. And so I'm grateful for a father like that. And that's why it makes it so easy to fight for him.
Yeah, nah, man. This is so crazy, man. And again, thank you so much for just sharing and giving that firsthand experience of what this is like. Because too many people don't know what this is, what this means, what this is like. I guess, man, I just want a couple of things. One more thing I want to ask, and then I'll let you go. One thing I want to say, like, from your experience, what advice or what do you say to I guess a couple different groups, right? So for one, there's people like you that are like in this situation all over the country, right? Like, what's the number? We got like 40,000 people locked up for cannabis charges all over this country, right? Mm-hmm. What do you say for other people, like, I guess, to help them stay strong that are in this same position, right? Like, what advice? What do you say to like cannabis companies that don't realize the value of, like, them being in the industry where they're making billions of dollars while having people that are in this situation? And then last but not least, actually probably most importantly, what do you say to like the lawmakers that have the ability to change these laws and bring people home, and change this, and so that we don't have situations like this happening?
Well, for the families and the people that are in similar situations, if another daughter that is, whether it's cannabis or whether you are a child, anyone that is suffering from the justice system in this way, I say keep going, keep fighting. Do never be quiet about this. Just as much as cannabis is making history, we are too, and we will, because we're the number ones that we have to push for this law. When we look back on it, there'll be a couple of faces and people and movement, and you want to make sure you're on the right side of this. The lawmakers I'll touch on last, but for companies that are literally making millions off of this plan, I ask, like, get involved. reach out to an organization, because I always feel like you got to give back. That's how like I truly believe in, what you put out. When you put out positivity is what you receive. And so I feel like a lot of these cannabis industries, and I'm going to say it, they're mainly rich and white. It's another ploy. Like, you're coming into another industry where there's a tragedy and you're choosing to ignore it. And I'm just asking, like, let's not do this again. Like, let's just see that there's an issue, and let's step up. And that means either whether it's donations, whether it's highlighting families, whether it's, there's so many families, legal fees. There's so many ways that you can get involved in this movement. And I'm truly going to call it that, because I think I think that it literally is something that is kind of just recently is sweeping like our states. And we kind of need to, it's moving so fast. Like, there's states legalizing little by little, and we're still missing the big part, the decriminalization part of it. And so I'm like, my biggest thing is these cannabis companies, especially big cannabis companies, we need your platform, right? This is and I would say that's any, but I'm like, we need it to be more than just business like that. This is just way deeper than that. And for the companies that can't see that, I hope you can hear this, that kind of inspires you. And then I think for Biden's administration, Biden has a marijuana clemency initiative that he should do right by us and a disenfranchised who's like incarcerated for marijuana. I think that the cannabis industry is spending a lot of money on donations and the Democrats and things like that, especially because their voter suppression is a thing. And so against I believe that the administration overall, the bill that they're bringing up, and it was called the Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act. Like, the legislation facing a lot of odds on both sides, whether it's Democratic and Republican when it comes to cannabis. And I think that they need to hear that this is a nonpartisan matter. Like, this is not something where it's like political. This is like a human right issue. And I think that, people like Charles Schumer, that's a Democrat out of NY, he's been getting criticized a lot because he's trying to push through a broad cannabis reform bill at the expense of marijuana banking bill, which it's a greater bipartisan support. Like, I think that there's so many great bills and legislations and things like that, but I'm like, we got to get out to vote. And these are things that I'm like, okay, if you're actually going to do this, we need to make sure when we're passing out a bill, it's behind the interests of the prisoners as well. And so that's kind of what I believe. Sorry, that was long-winded, but that's kind of what I believe the lawmakers with, because I just feel like we're missing it. We're missing it, and we're legalizing, but we're leaving a big part of the law out. And it's so impactful that my dad is kind of in an open sentencing, meaning if my dad has majority of his charges expunged, but the court is requiring him, even though one of his charges in California, 2 of his charges out of the 3 they're all cannabis, but 2 of the states it's legal. And so the judge said, if you can get one of these states to vacate it and say, hey, like, don't worry about it because it's legal now, you can go home tomorrow. So do you understand like how strenuous that is, like how frustrating that is to hear? We just need, and we've appealed to these states and they're like, well, it wasn't legal back then, kind of thing. And I'm like, there needs to be a cannabis reform bill. And I think we need to get out, we need to vote and put that on our ballots. That's great. We got it legalized. Let's finish the job though.
Absolutely, man. No, that's so important. And you're right. That is, Senators Schumer, Booker, Wyden. That's a great move with the Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act. Hopefully, like you said, at the end of the day, like fully legalized cannabis and bringing people home is important as everything else. And even when we talk about the other types of legislation, I'll say one of the things that I'm working on, and it's my goal to see that we can even have like opportunities for restorative justice included in that as well. Because I think that's what's missing, is something that you can never leave out. So, Richeda, man, I just got to tell you, thank you so much. First of all, you brought me out of retirement, girl. Like I was like, like you said, man. I was like, man, like I said, the vibe, like whatever just speaks. But like, I'm so happy that we came on and we did this today. For people out there listening, I'm glad that y'all got to hear this story. It's important. Like, y'all should absolutely support organizations like Last Prisoner Project that are doing this type of work to free prisoners. If you're in the cannabis industry, just think about that, how you can give back to these organizations that are really making an impact. I know for me, certainly as somebody who's now transitioned to being a business owner, is certainly something I'm thinking about. And again, just thank you, man. Like, cause I know it's not easy to do. It's not tough to, I know it's tough to come out and do this. And I'll say as a matter of fact, I'm gonna change that and say when your dad gets to hear this, what do you have to, what do you have to say to your dad? You got any shout out anything you want to say to him?
Well, we talk every day, so he already knows this is all going down. But I just want to say I love you. He knows that he calls me the apple his eye, and it's for life. And I'm never gonna stop when it comes behind my dad. It's all the pressure behind him. So I love you. Couldn't wait till you're home, and I just can't wait till this nightmare is over. Really.
Yeah. Like I said, man, I know what that means. Like I said, I got three little girls myself, man. So like just this conversation here, everything we talk, I just see me and them and you and your pop. So like, if you get to see this, I don't know you, but bro, I'm just got to say, man, I'm proud of your daughter and what the work that she's doing. And, Richeda, man, like, I'm so proud to see you on this journey and just keep it up. Anything I could do to help, man. We're going to get you to transfer to HU too.
Don't worry, HU.
We're going to make that happen. We're going to get you up in Howard. And, we're locked in, man. Mary, if you see this, man, thank you so much for making this intro. And, it's been good. We back. We might have some more episodes. This might be the only one for the year. Who knows? But we got at least this one. Thank you all for rocking with us. And peace out. All right.